There's a sound buried deep beneath the Pacific Ocean that science still can't fully explain. A sound so loud, so unnatural, that it was picked up by underwater microphones thousands of miles apart. A sound that, to this day, triggers debates, fears, and conspiracies. They called it the Bloop. If you've never heard of it before, don't worry. Most people haven't. And maybe that's exactly how certain people want it to stay. Because the truth is, this wasn't just some random ocean noise. This wasn't just static or equipment malfunction. This was something else. Something that echoed through the water with a force that sent chills down the spines of experienced oceanographers and researchers. A low, drawn-out, organic-sounding pulse that no known sea creature should have been able to make dot. It all started in 1997, deep under the South Pacific. A network of hydrophones originally installed by the U.S. military to detect enemy submarines picked up something that didn't fit any known acoustic signature. The system had been listening to the deep for decades, tracking whales, monitoring earthquakes, even recording distant icebergs cracking in Antarctica. But this was different. And the most disturbing part? The source location, middle of nowhere, thousands of miles from the nearest shipping lanes, islands, or human presence. Just open, empty ocean. A place where, by all logical accounts, nothing big enough to make that sound should exist. For weeks, the recording circulated quietly among scientific circles. Analysts reviewed the audio waveform over and over again. Marine biologists, acoustic engineers, even geologists, all trying to categorize it. Was it an animal? A geological event? Something mechanical? Every possible explanation hit a wall. The frequency pattern, the duration, the rising tone. Nothing matched anything they documented before. And when the recording finally leaked to the public, the internet did what the internet does best. It went wild. Forums exploded with theories. Was it a gigantic undiscovered sea creature? A government experiment? A remnant of some ancient, forgotten leviathan rising from the deep? Some people even whispered one name. A name pulled straight from horror fiction. CTHULHU. And if you're thinking, come on, that's just internet hysteria, here's where it gets unsettling. For years after the Bloop was recorded, data from that specific region started getting harder to access. Ocean monitoring reports became delayed. Certain hydrophone feeds went dark. And when journalists and researchers started asking questions, they were met with silence or vague, non-committal answers. Of course, in 2012, an OAA finally released an official explanation. They claimed the Bloop was nothing more than ice large scale, ice quakes from the Antarctic shelf. But here's the problem with that theory. The energy levels, the acoustic profile, the sheer volume of the Bloop, all of it makes that explanation feel incomplete. Even many within the scientific community weren't convinced. And while the internet slowly moved on to other viral mysteries, those who truly paid attention noticed something strange. The more people dug into the Bloop's origin, the more questions surfaced. Why was the original data collection so patchy? Why did some sound archives from that period quietly disappear? What if this wasn't just about a sound? What if it was about something much bigger, lurking out there in the vast, uncharted darkness beneath the waves? And here's where it gets even more chilling. The more you listen, the more you realize this mystery isn't just some distant ocean anomaly. It's a reminder that we still know so little about our own planet, about what's hiding out there, just beyond our reach. And maybe, just maybe, watching us back. So if you felt that same mix of curiosity and unease creeping in right now, if this story is making you question how much of the truth we're really being told, do me a favor, hit the like button. Not just because it helps the video, but because it tells me you're someone who still believes in asking uncomfortable questions. And I want to know your take on this. Have you ever heard of the Bloop before? Or do you think there's something much bigger and much stranger lurking out there making sounds like this? Drop a comment below and tell me. I believe there's more if you're with the skeptics. Or just an iceberg if you're buying the official story. And if this is the kind of mystery that keeps you up at night, questioning, wondering, needing to know more, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Because trust me, this is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle we're diving into. It started with a sound, not just any sound, but one that, by all accounts, shouldn't even exist. In the summer of 1997, while most of the world was busy with its everyday noise cars honking in traffic, radios blasting summer hits, people going about their lives, something deep and ancient stirred beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from land, where sunlight barely touches and human presence is nearly non-existent. A network of underwater microphones, hydrophones placed thereby. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, picked up something no one expected. At first, it seemed like static, a distant, low-frequency rumble mixed with strange pulses. But as the audio engineers listened more closely, adjusting the playback, amplifying the waveform, that's when it hit them. This wasn't random noise. This was something alive, something that had a signature, a rise in frequency, a deep, resonant energy that built up, then faded, almost like a biological call. But the problem was, it was too loud, too powerful, a kind of sound that should come from something colossal, far larger than any known marine creature. They named it the Bloop. Imagine sitting in a sound lab, staring at a waveform on your screen, realizing that whatever made that noise was vibrating entire layers of the ocean at once. Not just at one point, but across sensors positioned over 3,000 miles apart. For scale, that's like hearing the same sound in Los Angeles. And then again, almost simultaneously, in Alaska, the pressure waves were that intense. And here's where the confusion, and let's be honest, the fear started creeping in. The NOAA team, trained to recognize things like underwater earthquakes, submarine movements, volcanic activity, and even icebergs cracking in the Antarctic, found themselves staring at data they couldn't explain. The Bloop didn't match any known seismic event. It wasn't a submarine, it wasn't an explosion, and it definitely wasn't ice moving. In fact, as they cross-referenced decades of acoustic data from the Pacific, nothing came close. Not in frequency, not in pattern, not in amplitude. When the audio clip was first made public, many people who heard it for the first time reported an odd physical reaction. Listeners described a sudden chill, goosebumps running down their arms, a primal, almost instinctive discomfort, as if, on some deep evolutionary level, their bodies were recognizing a predator they weren't meant to hear. If you've never listened to it before, imagine this: a drawn-out, throaty, organic bellow, starting low, then sweeping upward in a sudden, eerie crescendo. It didn't sound mechanical. It didn't sound like nature. It sounded wrong. Some compared it to a distant whale call. But when marine biologists analyzed the decibel levels, another alarming truth surfaced. Whatever had made that noise would have to be multiple times larger than a blue whale. And for context, a blue whale is already the largest known animal to ever exist on Earth. Yet this was louder, much louder. And that's when the theories began. The first whispers inside scientific circles started with a single terrifying question. What could be down there, that big, and still completely unknown to us? We're talking about a part of the planet we barely understand. The deep ocean, vast, cold, dark, and almost entirely unexplored. More people have walked on the surface of the moon and have descended to the depths where the Bloop was recorded. The more people listened, the more unsettling it became. News about the Bloop started leaking to the public. Audio clips circulated on early internet forums. Conspiracy threads popped up on websites dedicated to deep-sea anomalies, government cover-ups, and unexplained phenomena. This wasn't just a scientific curiosity anymore. It became a full-blown mystery, a piece of the real-life creepypasta world, shared by people hungry for answers. And as the curiosity grew, so did the fear. Was this the first acoustic signature of something ancient awakening in the deep? Or was it something worse? That's when people started connecting the dots to other strange oceanic events from the same decade. Reports of unexplained mass fish die-offs in nearby regions, unusual migration patterns among whales and dolphins, even a few classified naval documents suddenly harder to access after the Bloop entered public conversation. But before we jump too far ahead, let's pause here. Let the weight of this moment sink in. A sound recorded once, never repeated with the same intensity, and still without a definitive, universally accepted explanation. And now, I need to ask you something. If you felt even the slightest chill hearing about this, if there's a part of you already replaying this mystery in your head, hit that like button right now. Not just for me, but to show the algorithm that there are still people out there who care about uncovering the unknown. And I want your opinion. Had you heard about the Bloop before today? Do you think it's just a natural event? Or is there something more? Drop a comment right now and type, "I heard it too," if this story gave you chills. Or just ocean noise, if you think we're all overreacting. And of course, if this kind of deep-sea mystery content resonates with you, if you want more stories about hidden sounds, unexplained phenomena, and the parts of our world we're still too afraid to explore, make sure you subscribe right now, because what's coming next will take this mystery even deeper. Scientists first heard the Bloop. The immediate reaction was a mix of excitement and confusion. A sound that powerful, that low frequency, and that far-reaching wasn't something you just ignored. The first logical step was to rule out the obvious. After all, when you work in oceanic research, strange noises aren't exactly rare. The ocean is full of natural sounds, tectonic shifts, underwater landslides, even the distant crackle of icebergs fracturing and moving. So naturally, the first theory that surfaced was glacial activity. Icequakes, as they're called, are known to create booming, low-frequency sounds that can travel across vast distances underwater. The thinking was, maybe a huge section of Antarctic ice had shifted, cracked, or collapsed, sending shock waves through the Pacific. For a brief moment, that explanation seemed to fit. The South Pacific isn't that far, relatively speaking, from Antarctica. And underwater microphones, those hydrophones used by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, often pick up sounds from icy regions thousands of miles away. But here's where things got strange, and where the curiosity of marine scientists turned into quiet suspicion. The acoustic signature of the Bloop didn't match what they'd expect from ice movement. Icequakes produce long, drawn-out rumbles with very specific frequency patterns. The Bloop was different. It had a rising pitch, almost organic in nature. It started low, then climbed sharply in frequency, like something alive, something exerting itself. Some experts compared it to the call of a giant creature. Others were more cautious, saying it resembled no known seismic or glacial event on record. The next explanation? Tectonic activity. Earthquakes under the sea are a regular occurrence, and they too produce massive bursts of sound energy. But again, the waveform didn't match. The Bloop lacked the violent, abrupt onset typical of quakes. It had fluidity, a strange rolling quality. As more data poured in, analysts began overlaying the Bloop's frequency curve with known templates for earthquakes, landslides, and icequakes, and nothing lined up. The sound sat in its own category, a new acoustic anomaly. And as days turned into weeks, new theories started surfacing. Could it have been some kind of underwater explosion? Maybe a secret military test? An accidental detonation? A submarine accident? But that didn't fit either. Explosions create sharp, peaking audio spikes. The bloop was smooth, consistent, and lasted much longer than any explosive event would dot at this point. A shift happened inside the oceanography community. What started as a search for a rational, scientific answer began morphing into something closer to speculation and unease. Teams at NOAA remained largely silent in public. Peer-reviewed papers discussing the bloop were minimal and often vague. Behind closed doors, some researchers admitted they were just as confused as the general public. And it was around this time that journalists and amateur researchers started digging deeper. People began comparing the bloop with known biological sounds, whale songs, large fish communication patterns, even the rumble of massive schools of krill when they move in dense formations. But again, nothing was loud enough, long enough, or similar enough. It was like trying to match a fingerprint that didn't belong to any known species. Marine biologists went back to old deep-sea recordings, searching for patterns, for forgotten anomalies, hoping to find a match. Some even wondered, could there be an unknown life form, far larger than any whale, living in the uncharted trenches of the South Pacific? A creature adapted to the crushing pressures of the Hadal Zone, moving slowly, calling out unheard for centuries. Until that one day in 1997, when the hydrophones happened to be listening at the right place, at the right time. The fear wasn't just about what the bloop was, but about what else could be down there, making sounds we'd never even recorded. And while many experts clung to the safer theories, ice, quakes, or geological movements, there was an undeniable, growing discomfort in scientific circles. The data didn't lie, and this wasn't just background ocean noise. This was something new, something that didn't fit, something that forced everyone to ask the same chilling question. If none of our known explanations fit, then what are we really dealing with here? And here's where the mystery takes a turn that still gives scientists chills to this day. Let's talk about the scale, the impossible scale of the bloop, because up until this point, strange sounds in the ocean weren't exactly new. Hydrophones around the world had picked up all kinds of undersea noises over the decades, cracking ice, distant underwater landslides, shifting tectonic plates. But the bloop was different. When researchers at NOAA analyzed the waveform and ran their calculations, something stood out immediately. The amplitude of the sound was off the charts. We're talking about a low-frequency, ultra-powerful acoustic event that traveled across more than 5,000 kilometers of open water. Just stop and let that sink in for a second. This wasn't a localized noise. This wasn't something that faded. After a few hundred miles, hydrophones stationed thousands of kilometers apart picked up the exact same sound, loud, clear, unmistakable. And here's the part that still keeps some oceanographers awake at night. For a sound like that to propagate through the ocean at that volume, the source would have to be absolutely enormous. And I don't mean big like a whale, enormous. I mean something orders of magnitude larger than any known marine animal. Enormous. Let's put it into perspective. Blue whales are the largest known creatures on Earth. Their calls can reach up to 188 decibels, underwater loud enough to travel for hundreds of miles. But when scientists compared the bloop to known whale calls, the difference wasn't just noticeable, it was overwhelming. The bloop's power made even the loudest blue whale seem like a whisper in comparison. Some early calculations suggested that if the bloop was biological, if it was actually coming from a living creature, the animal responsible would have to be several times larger than a blue whale. Several times. Imagine that for a moment. A living, moving being, somewhere deep in the Pacific, large enough to produce that kind of acoustic footprint. And here's where things get even stranger. The frequency signature of the bloop. It shared some characteristics with biological sounds. Not identical, but close enough to raise serious questions. The slow rise and fall in frequency. The organic curve of the waveform. It didn't look like a tectonic event. It didn't resemble the sharp, sudden bursts of an underwater explosion. There was a fluidity to it, something disturbingly alive. Marine biologists and deep-sea researchers were divided. Some argued that no living organism could survive at the depths necessary to produce such a sound. The pressure alone at those levels deep in the abyssal plains of the Pacific would crush most known life forms instantly. But others weren't so sure. After all, the deep ocean is the least explored environment on Earth. We've mapped more of Mars than we have of our own seafloor. And there's something almost poetic about that, isn't there? That in this modern age of satellites, GPS, and real-time data, there are still parts of our own planet where something massive could exist unnoticed, unheard, until one brief, powerful moment in 1997 when it made itself known. And as this debate grew, as forums lit up and late-night radio shows started speculating, another question started haunting people. If the bloop really did come from something alive, where is it now? Was it a one-time event? Or could it still be out there, silent, waiting somewhere in the dark? And just when people thought the mystery couldn't get stranger, the internet got involved. As the data spread beyond research labs and into the public domain, something shifted. What started as a niche scientific curiosity suddenly became a full-blown internet phenomenon. It's like the moment people realized there was an unsolved mystery lurking at the bottom of our own planet. Collective imagination kicked into overdrive. Message boards from the late 90s and early 2000s lit up. Reddit threads started exploding years later. Conspiracy forums, paranormal websites, YouTube deep dives, late-night AM radio shows, everyone wanted a piece of the bloop mystery. And here's where things got truly bizarre, because as humans, we don't like unanswered questions. When science doesn't give us closure, we fill the gap with our own fears, our own fantasies, and sometimes with ancient nightmares. One theory that spread like wildfire was, of course, Cthulhu. Yes, Cthulhu. The fictional cosmic horror entity created by H.P. Lovecraft back in the 1920s. For those who don't know, Cthulhu is described as a gargantuan, godlike being, sleeping beneath the ocean in a sunken city called R'lyeh, deep in the South Pacific. And guess where the bloop originated? That's right, the same region of the ocean Lovecraft once pointed to as the home of his sleeping monster. Coincidence? Maybe. But for conspiracy theorists and horror fans, this was all the confirmation they needed. Fan-made maps started circulating online, comparing NOAA's coordinates for the bloop with Lovecraft's fictional location of R'lyeh. The overlap was close enough to make people uncomfortable. Some even joked or half-joked that maybe Lovecraft wasn't making things up. Maybe he was documenting something he knew, something the rest of us weren't supposed to. Memes started. The bloop is Cthulhu waking up. This is how the world ends. Not with a bang, but with a bloop. It was funny at first, but then came the late-night YouTube comment sections, the anonymous posts, people claiming to have heard similar sounds while deep-sea fishing or working on research vessels in the Pacific. And then there were the monster theories that didn't even try to be subtle. Giant undiscovered sea creatures, megalodons, prehistoric leviathans that somehow escaped extinction, creatures so large, so ancient, that they existed in layers of the ocean we've never physically explored. And the bloop? That was just one of them calling, warning, or maybe hunting. Some amateur researchers even tried to model the potential size and physiology of a creature that could make a sound like that. Their conclusions? Terrifying. We're talking about organisms hundreds of meters long, with specialized biology, capable of withstanding the crushing pressures of the Hadal Zone, the deepest part of the ocean. Of course, skeptics jumped in. They argued it was just internet hysteria, that people were cherry-picking facts and ignoring scientific logic, that everyone was letting their obsession with sea monsters and internet horror lead into real science. But here's the thing. The more people researched, the stranger the story got. Old sailors' tales about uncharted waters. Reports of enormous sonar anomalies recorded long before the bloop, but never released to the public. And then, the sheer silence from official sources. No updates, no follow-ups. Just that one eerie, unexplained recording from 1997. And then, nothing. It almost felt like the more people asked questions, the fewer answers came back. As if the bloop wasn't just a sound, but the beginning of something much bigger. Something lurking, hidden just below the surface, both of the ocean and of everything we think we know about this planet. And while people argued online, speculating, debunking, theorizing, others began noticing something even more unsettling. Around the same time of the bloop, certain government datasets suddenly went dark. It started small. A few researchers noticed it first. Academic teams who regularly accessed NOAA, public hydrophone archives, realized that shortly after the bloop was recorded, large segments of oceanic data simply stopped being updated. No official statement, no error messages, just long, unbroken gaps where once there had been a constant flow of sound monitoring. At first, people thought it was a technical glitch. Servers down, maybe maintenance. But days turned into weeks, and then months. Some of the most active hydrophone networks, especially the ones positioned near the South Pacific, suddenly went silent. No new data, no explanations. Marine biologists and oceanographers began sending inquiries. Freedom of Information Act requests were filed. And yet, every time, the response was cold, repetitive, almost robotic. Data temporarily unavailable. Updates pending. Updates that never came. It didn't take long for conspiracy forums to light up again. People started asking, was this just bad infrastructure? Or was something being deliberately hidden? The timing felt too precise, too suspicious. The bloop gets recorded. Global curiosity explodes. And then, almost like clockwork, the microphones that could give us more answers go dark. Some insiders, people who had previously worked on classified acoustic surveillance projects, started leaking small pieces of information online. Anonymous posts on early internet boards claimed that certain hydrophones were being retasked for national security interests, that the military had taken over some of the monitoring systems originally designed for marine research. Others pointed to budget reallocations. Documents showing sudden increases in classified spending on undersea acoustic arrays. There were rumors about submarine detection networks originally built during the Cold War, now being reprogrammed to track. Something else. The more people dug, the stranger it got. One researcher, who asked not to be named, posted a now-deleted thread detailing how his team had been tracking unusual low-frequency signatures in the South Pacific, only to have their project funding abruptly cut without explanation. Their equipment seized, their access credentials revoked overnight. And then there was the odd case of a graduate student at a university in California who'd been working on a thesis mapping deep-sea sound anomalies. According to archived forum posts, she suddenly disappeared from all online activity after posting a preliminary map that seemed to show recurring low-frequency pulses coming from roughly the same location where the bloop was first recorded. Her friends later claimed she'd received a cease and desist letter, but no one ever found the original source of that document. Her project, deleted from the university's research site within 48 hours. Coincidence or censorship? Some said it was all just internet folklore, a mix of half-truths and paranoia. But others pointed out something much harder to ignore. NOAA itself, in the years following the bloop, stopped publishing live updates from key undersea listening posts. When pressed for explanations, their official line was always the same: routine maintenance, technical upgrades, resource constraints. But why? For that specific region? Why, out of all the vast expanses of the Pacific, was that stretch of water suddenly off limits? To make things worse, whenever someone tried to cross-reference historical data looking for previous, unknown sounds in that area, whole sections of archived hydrophone logs seemed to be missing, like entire months wiped clean. Theories exploded. Some believed the government had detected ongoing movements. Whatever had caused the bloop wasn't stationary. Others thought there might have been classified naval exercises. Or worse, an ongoing biological threat too big to disclose. One particularly viral theory suggested that the U.S. Navy had deployed deep-sea monitoring drones, equipped not to study, but to contain, as if something was still active down there, something that couldn't reach the surface. And then came the satellite reports. Independent researchers began noticing anomalies in satellite temperature. Scans over that same stretch of ocean. Unexplained thermal spikes, sudden temperature shifts, almost as if something massive was moving deep beneath the surface, disturbing the water layers in ways no known submarine or geological event could. But just as quickly as these anomalies appeared, the data was scrubbed from public platforms. Government-owned satellite databases stopped displaying certain bands of thermal imagery for that zone. Attempts to download older datasets blocked. It's almost like the silence surrounding the bloop wasn't just underwater anymore. It had spread to every channel of information we thought we could trust. And with every door that closed, the curiosity grew. The fear grew. People started asking themselves, if the bloop was really just ice cracking, why would they go to such lengths to hide everything that happened after? What were they so desperate to keep us from knowing? In 2012, after years of speculation, the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, finally stepped forward with an official explanation. According to their report, the mysterious bloop sound was nothing more than the noise generated by icequakes, massive chunks of ice cracking and breaking off from glaciers or icebergs. On paper, this seemed like a reasonable answer. Ice movement is a known natural phenomenon. It can produce loud sounds underwater, and it fits with the fact that similar noises have been recorded in polar regions. But here's where things start to unravel. The NOAA's explanation left a significant portion of both the scientific community and curious observers deeply unsatisfied. It wasn't just the scale of the sound, but the duration and unique audio signature of the bloop that made it unlike any other icequake ever recorded. The bloop was extraordinarily powerful, loud enough to be detected across an area larger than most natural underwater noises. And it wasn't a one-time blip, it was a sequence of pulses, exhibiting a pattern that some experts argued seemed too deliberate, too structured to be purely geological. Several oceanographers and bioacoustics specialists voiced their doubts. They pointed out inconsistencies. The frequency range didn't quite match typical ice movements. The signal lasted much longer than expected from a single ice event, and the distance the sound traveled defied what icequakes normally produce. If the bloop was just ice cracking, then why had no other icequake ever produced a sound so distinct and so powerful? To many, the official story felt like a convenient way to close the case, to silence the growing wave of speculation. The ocean is a vast, mysterious realm. There is so much we don't understand. When faced with the unknown, it's easier to attribute it to natural causes we already know, rather than admit the possibility of something far more extraordinary lurking beneath the waves. And that's exactly why the debate never truly died. Forums and conspiracy sites exploded with alternative explanations, fueled by the lingering doubts about the NOAA's statement. Was the bloop really an icequake? Or was it a carefully orchestrated cover-up to hide the existence of a colossal sea creature? A living being so massive, so alien to our understanding, that it defied all biological norms? The idea sounds like science fiction, but the ocean has always been the birthplace of the unexpected. In fact, several experts warned that the data on the Bloop was limited, based on recordings from a relatively small network of hydrophones. There was a distinct lack of follow-up expeditions or publicly released detailed studies aimed specifically at locating the source. It raised a question. If the NOAA was confident in their icequake explanation, why wasn't there more transparency? Why didn't they send research teams to confirm and document the phenomena more conclusively? This lack of clear, open investigation fueled skepticism. It invited the notion that governments or scientific institutions might be quietly withholding information. After all, if there really was an enormous creature or an unknown underwater phenomenon, what impact could that have on public perception? On fishing industries? On maritime security? The Bloop, with its haunting and unexplainable sound, had captured imaginations worldwide. It wasn't just a noise recorded by sensors. It became a symbol of our limited understanding of Earth's last frontiers. The official explanation might have tried to tie the mystery up neatly, but the shadows of doubt remained long and deep. People who had listened closely to the Bloop's original recording, the eerie rising and falling pulses, echoing through the ocean depths, felt something that science couldn't fully explain. A profound, almost primal connection to the unknown. It touched on that universal fear and wonder we all share about what might be lurking beneath the surface. Unseen, untouched, but undeniably present. The ocean is over 80% unexplored, and every new sound that drifts up from the abyss challenges our perception of life, nature, and the limits of human knowledge. The Bloop is more than just a mystery sound. It's a challenge to our curiosity, a call to look deeper, listen closer, and question what we think we know. And as we unravel the threads of this story, we start to see that the official explanation is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. A puzzle that continues to haunt the deepest parts of the ocean and the deepest parts of our imagination. And this is where the story takes a darker, more unsettling turn. Because even with the NOA as official explanation sitting there, like a neatly wrapped package, the question still lingers in the air. What if the Bloop wasn't ice? What if it was something alive? Think about it for a second. The sheer scale of that sound, powerful enough to travel across entire ocean basins, louder than any known marine animal, and with a frequency signature that didn't match ice, whales, or tectonic activity. For years, marine biologists and deep-sea researchers have speculated that there could be species in the ocean depths, creatures so enormous, so far removed from anything we've ever documented, that they simply exist beyond the reach of our current technology. It's almost hard to process, right? We live in an age of satellites and AI, where we can map the surface of Mars with stunning detail. Yet more than 80% of our own ocean remains unexplored. Black, silent, and crushing under unimaginable pressure, the deep sea is a world we've barely touched. And when you frame the Bloop inside that reality, the idea of a living source doesn't sound as crazy as it did at first. Some theories point to colossal cephalopods, giant squid, or even a new undiscovered species of megafauna, something with vocal cords, or whatever evolutionary equivalent it uses, that could produce low-frequency sounds capable of crossing oceans. Others dive even deeper into the speculative. They talk about abyssal leviathans, biological relics from prehistoric eras, species that evolved in complete isolation, adapting to the crushing darkness for millions of years. There's even a fringe group of researchers who floated the idea that the Bloop could have come from a creature so large, so ancient, that it operates on a biological scale we can't even comprehend. Imagine something the size of a small island, moving slowly, breathing deeply, and releasing a sound like the Bloop as part of its natural behavior. And then there's the psychological side. Some oceanographers who have spent years out at sea, monitoring deep-sea acoustics, have described moments where they felt watched, where instruments behaved strangely, where signal patterns hinted at movement, massive movement, just beyond the detection range of their equipment. It's easy to dismiss that as imagination. The human mind plays tricks when surrounded by miles of darkness and silence. But when you combine that with unexplained signals like the bloop, the lines between scientific fact and primal fear start to blur. Let's also not forget the pattern that followed the bloop's discovery. After 1997, other unexplained underwater sounds started showing up. Julia, Upsweep, the slowdown. All distinct from the bloop, but all sharing one eerie similarity. Their origins remain unknown. And here's something that rarely gets mentioned. When researchers tried triangulating the bloop's source, it pointed to a location eerily close to a place known among horror fiction fans. Point Nemo, the most remote spot in the ocean. A place furthest from any known landmass. A literal dead zone for human activity. The kind of place where, if something massive did exist, it could hide undisturbed for centuries. Coincidence? Or one more piece in a puzzle that's been quietly forming beneath the waves. And even if you don't believe in giant sea monsters or deep-sea leviathans, there's still this one haunting truth. We simply don't know what's down there. Every time we send a new submersible, every time we drop new sensors, we're reminded of how little control we actually have over the planet we live on. The ocean is vast, unpredictable, and full of unanswered questions. So tonight, when you close your eyes, when the house is quiet and the outside world fades, I want you to imagine this. Somewhere far beneath the surface, in the crushing blackness, something ancient, something massive, could still be moving, still breathing, still watching, waiting for us to get just a little closer. And with every unexplained signal, every strange acoustic anomaly, every pulse of sound picked up by underwater sensors, the mystery grows. The bloop may have been recorded over 2 decades ago, but the fear, the curiosity, the unanswered questions, they're louder than ever. And the next time the sensors pick up something new, something deep, something we weren't meant to hear, will we even know in time? And just when you think the mystery might be over, that maybe the bloop was just a weird one-time event, the ocean reminds us that it's far from finished with us. Because even after NOAA's official statement, even after years of debate between skeptics and believers, new sounds started to emerge. Strange, powerful underwater signals, some similar in tone, others completely different, but all sharing one thing in common. No clear source. Let's start with what happened just a few years after the bloop faded from the public conversation. In 2001, hydrophones detected something called Julia, a low, long moan that echoed through the South Pacific for nearly 15 seconds. Its location? Once again, not too far from Point Nemo. Then came the Upsweep, first recorded in the late 90s, but unlike the bloop, this one didn't stop. It's a continuous, seasonally shifting sound, still being picked up today. And no one, not NOAA, not independent researchers, not military sonar operators, can definitively explain what's making it. And it doesn't end there. There's the slowdown, another deep, low-frequency anomaly recorded in 1997, the same year as the bloop, and again no confirmed source. With each new recording, the questions grew. If all these sounds have no clear natural explanation, what's really happening beneath the waves? Could they all be connected? Different vocalizations from the same unknown entity? Or multiple unknown species, each with their own biological signature, each too large, too deep, too elusive for us to detect visually? And here's where the conspiracy theories reignite, because as the years passed, something else started happening, something that made researchers, independent oceanographers, and even amateur radio enthusiasts raise their eyebrows. Data gaps, sudden blackouts in publicly available hydrophone feeds, long stretches where no new oceanic sound data was released, or where large sections of recordings were redacted, missing, or conveniently unavailable due to technical issues. And when independent researchers tried to access raw acoustic data from certain locations near the South Pacific, they ran into walls, no longer accessible, data corrupted, under review. Coincidence? Maybe. But when you stack it all together, the growing list of unexplained underwater sounds, the shifting government explanations, the gaps in data streams, it paints a picture that feels off. And then came the satellite anomalies in late 2018. And again in 2021, satellite imaging over specific regions of the South Pacific started showing irregular heat signatures, large moving heat anomalies beneath the water. When journalists and science bloggers reached out to NOAA and other oceanic research bodies for clarification, the responses were vague. Some blamed underwater volcanic activity. Others said it was probably data error, but nothing conclusive. And let's not forget, most of the deep ocean remains unmonitored. We only have a tiny network of hydrophones, mostly designed decades ago, for Cold War submarine detection. So here's the unsettling reality. For every strange sound we do detect, how many others are happening right now, slipping by unnoticed, resonating through the dark, while we sit here, scrolling through our phones, blissfully unaware. And that brings us to today. New hydrophone data is being collected. New deep-sea missions are underway. Autonomous underwater drones, classified military submersibles, and unmarked research vessels, all out there, listening, recording, searching. And yet, the public only gets to see carefully filtered snippets. Every time a new anomaly appears, forums light up with speculation. Reddit threads explode. Twitter fills with new conspiracy theories. Another bloop? New Julia signal? South Pacific anomaly? And here's something even stranger. In private communities of marine acoustics researchers, there's talk of a new sound detected just months ago. Low frequency, powerful, with a frequency pattern eerily similar to the original bloop. But so far, no official release, no public audio file, just whispers, leaked spectrogram screenshots, and anonymous posts on obscure science forums. Some are calling it Bloop 2.0. Others simply refer to it as the return. And here we are again, staring at the same unanswered questions, wondering if we're on the edge of a new discovery or a new cover-up. So now it's your turn. After everything you've heard, every unexplained sound, every missing data point, every eerie coincidence surrounding Point Nemo and the South Pacific, what do you believe? Do you trust the official narrative that all of this can be explained away by shifting ice and geological tremors? Or, deep down, does a part of you believe there's something else out there? Something massive, ancient, and still waiting beneath the waves? If you've made it this far, it means you felt something. Maybe it was the mystery. Maybe it was that strange chill down your spine. Or maybe it's just that unexplainable curiosity that pulls people like us deeper into the unknown God. So, if at any point during this video you felt goosebumps, or caught yourself holding your breath for just a second, go ahead and hit the like button right now. That small click helps this video reach more people who love real-life mysteries and unexplained phenomena just like you. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Type the phrase, "I still hear it," if you, like me, feel that this mystery isn't over, that the echo of the bloop is still out there somewhere, waiting to be heard again. And hey, if you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. Join this community of curious minds who refuse to settle for the easy answers. Click subscribe, and don't stop here, because the next deep sea mystery video is already waiting for you. It should be right here on your screen now. Just click, and let's dive even deeper.